Hi, I'm Jacqueline.
And I'm Courtney, and this is Caffeinated Crimes. And I'm not just laughing because your voice cracked, but I'm also laughing because the second I hit record, I don't know if the mic picks it up or not, but my stomach went like,
We're we're on it tonight. Let me tell you. If you guys heard last week's episode, we're doing a double header tonight, and it's a Friday night. We've both worked all week. This is the fourth episode we've recorded in the last 5 days. We had technology issues. We have brain fry issues. It's just, yeah, it's quite the it's like the first time we ever recorded a podcast. No, that's not true. The first time we ever recorded a podcast, things were too rehearsed and too scripted. And now we got to the point where we're just like, where the fuck are we? What's happening? I don't know. Here's the story. Okay, see you next week.
Yeah. Yeah. It gets to the point now. I mean, you heard in the Tiffany Valenti case, Jacqueline didn't even know where it was going because she didn't even read the second half of the notes.
Nope, I usually don't. I'm not gonna lie.
It's like a half espresso every week, you know?
Yeah, I'm always a little surprised. I don't have time to read the full thing. So I'm like, let me get through what I can. Okay,
Yeah.
done. We'll figure it out. It's great. Also, I had a little fun story that I wanted to tell Courtney that I was going to save and share with you guys in case you found it funny. But when we recorded last week's episode that we just recorded an hour ago, when Courtney logged on, her AirPods were not connecting. So like I was talking and she couldn't hear me. So she's trying to, get it figured out so that I'm still kind of talking to like see, like, 'cause I'm like watching for her face to see, okay, let me try now. Let me try now. Nothing. So then I started doing whale noises, like, very
Yeah.
deeply into the microphone. And then, and then I've never seen this before. This thing popped up on Zoom and it was like, are you playing music? Do you want to open the professional audio editor?
Zoom literally nicely said, "What the fuck are you doing?"
Zoom was like, would you like some auto tune on that? Because, ooh, girl, that's rough. Let's help you out.
That's rough.
Yeah.
What that made me think of was the time, I think it was me, you, and maybe Carter was also in the car.
Yes.
And we all just started making whale noises
Yep.
together and then all
Exactly.
just stopped and never really talked about it.
Yeah. It just became just a nice little, it
And
was
now we have whale tattoos because of that moment.
exactly. We do. And that was a beautiful moment, like 13-ish, 12 years ago. I want to say, was that mine and Carter's last day of high school? I want to
It
say that was
might have been
I think that was our very last day of senior year. We like went to get lunch
Olive
or
Garden.
something.
Was it Olive Garden?
I think we did go to Olive Garden. Why did we go to Olive Garden that day
I don't know.
randomly? What
But you know
else were we
what?
doing? That was
People who slander
interesting.
on Olive Garden, get the fuck out of here. That shit slaps sometimes. I know it's not authentic Italian. I know
It's
it.
it's still delicious. It's
But
fine.
you listen, here's the hack. I got Me and Kevin figured this out. What you do, you go, you get the
Hmm.
salad. You can get the soup if you want,
Obviously.
I guess, but get the salad.
I like some Olive Garden soup. I'm not gonna lie.
Their
I do
soup is very
enjoy.
good.
Yeah.
But for my hack, I haven't worked out how to get the soup.
Okay.
So
Okay.
so you get the salad and you get the breadsticks. You eat your salad. You ask for a second bowl of salad, right? So it's on the table. So then you get your food, you eat it. You only eat half. Personally, I only eat half. I can't eat the whole thing. Not
Yeah.
after I've eaten 4 breadsticks already. So then you ask for 3 to-go boxes, one for each of your entrees and one for the salad. Then you ask for some breadsticks to go, and you have the whole meal again the next day, salad and all.
That's
Except
a great hack.
the last time we went, because we had a gift card, we forgot to get the second bowl of salad, and
Oh no.
I just went, do you do to-go salads? These bitches brought it out in this fancy container with it had a cup for the to-go Italian seasoning, so it
Oh
wasn't already
wow.
on the lettuce, and the little bag of croutons.
Oh, that's lovely. That's
It was very
lovely.
nice, but I know it's not authentic Italian. I know all you food snobs out there are like, how dare you say this? But I fuck with some Olive Garden. I
I think, but
do.
you can be both. Like my husband is very much a food snob, but also loves Little Caesars with every fiber of his being.
Yeah.
So I mean, you can have it both ways. It's fine.
I feel like every meal doesn't have to be a 10 out of 10.
Yeah.
And
And
like,
sometimes the meals that like are like
$70 a plate. I'm like, you gave me 3 little tiny pieces of chicken and I'm
expensive
still hungry.
food is never enough food. You always leave hungry from expensive food. It was really funny because our anniversary was last week at the time of this recording, and Andrew was looking at like some like nice restaurants that we could go to, and he's like, oh, like we could go to like this place, like whatever, and it was going to be, you know, like a pretty pricey dinner. And I was like, oh, I mean, like, if you want to. And he's like, well, do you not want to? And I was like, well, we just went out for Father's Day that was like an expensive dinner. So like maybe we do something that's like, and he's like, oh, thank God. He's like, I didn't want to do that anyway. I just thought I should take you somewhere nice for our anniversary. And I was like, you can buy me a turkey burger for our anniversary. Like, I don't care. Yeah. We don't have to go to like a fancy place. And he's like, well, we did last year. I was like, well, yeah, last year was our 10th anniversary. So he's like, okay, every 10 years, I'll take you to a nice place for our anniversary. I was like, perfect.
See, that's why too, like a lot of the places in Knoxville that are like a little bit more pricey, it's like I look at the menu and I'm like, okay, but that's really expensive. And do I really want that for that price? And there's some places like Landing House, the meal I get is like $19, but it's worth every penny. It's fucking delicious. And I'm sure maybe I'd go to some of those places, but once you start getting in the $30, $40, $50 a plate range, I ain't to the point of rich where I'm like feeling good about, I'm going to be eating it like, ooh.
So there's like a math statistics word for this. I can't remember what it's like. I want to say the inversion curve, but I don't think that's right. But it's like up to a certain point, like things like go in the same direction and then it like goes the opposite. So I'm like, so it's like, okay, like super cheap food, like, and it's kind of like, you know, you have like your McDonald's and then you like have like your Olive Garden and then like you have your like your favorite restaurant that's like a good like $20 a plate meal. And then you get into like the super expensive food and then the quality just like goes down. Like it's not worth the price that you're paying once you get, it's like to a certain point, it's like, yeah, I'll pay more for a good quality meal. And then you get to a point where you're like, okay, now it's not like that anymore. I explained that horribly, but I think you understand the point I'm making.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. It's like an hourglass kind of thing. That shape, not necessarily an actual hourglass, but yeah, it's also, just it gets hard to sometimes justify that I'm about to go spend $200 on a meal. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of hard to swallow sometimes. I'm not to the point in my life where that's just an easy amount of money to spend.
Yeah, like I said, we had like a pricey Father's Day dinner because we went to like a Brazilian steakhouse that like Andrew's always wanted to go to.
Yeah.
And that's like something like, different.
We'll go to like for special occasions, like sometimes Kevin's birthday, we'll go to Chesapeake's and that ends up being really expensive, but that's like the special occasion kind of thing.
Exactly.
Not the everyday
Which
thing.
I'm like Father's Day is like the week before our anniversary. So I'm like, yeah, we can't have like 2 like special occasion dinners like in the same week. Like I can't be like blowing my like month's worth of eating out and my month's worth of eating out budget in 2 meals, you know?
Yeah.
But also, do you ever in these intros kind of forget that we're recording a podcast?
Literally. I was talking and then I look up and I was like, we're recording.
Because I literally I'm like going along and then I was like, wait, are we? And then I was like, oh, we are recording. We did start recording at some point. Whoops.
Yeah, no, I definitely did. Like we were just talking about it and everything. And I looked up and I was like, I see the like flash and I was like, oh, I forgot.
So if you guys ever wonder if our banter in the beginning is authentic, like sometimes we just forget that we're on a podcast and we just think we're FaceTiming and chatting.
How long have we been talking about this? Okay, maybe we should get into the episode.
Whoops. Oh, I start. Okay, I'm going to get into the episode then. Let me get a sip of this shitty IPA that I'm still drinking.
And then after you do the sources, there's probably going to be more discussion over something various. So sorry, guys. This is a very, very serious episode and we're just,
we cannot record on a Friday night. This is...
No, we can't do this
We're
again.
all over the place. Yeah. Okay. But our sources for this episode, an article from blackpast.org, the Zen Education Project, historyextra.com, the Jamaican Information Service, a history.com article, and an article from slaveryandremembrance.org. So speaking of long-winded discussions, with the recent news of the OceanGate Titan submarine, there has been a resurgence in discussing the Zong Massacre that occurred in 1781. So I'm sure everyone knows all about OceanGate at this point. Can I say something really stupid? So Okay, so
Is
you
it
know
that
how
it sounds like Watergate?
Watergate? Yes. And
Yeah.
I didn't realize that was the actual name until
Yeah.
a significant amount of time after everything happened. Like, I literally thought people were calling it Ocean Gate as like a joke on
Mhm.
Watergate because like people do that with all kinds of things, you know. So yeah, I did not realize
Yeah.
until a good amount
It's
into it
it's kind
that
of an unfortunate name and kind of an
yeah.
unfortunate. And just in case somehow you have been living under a rock and don't know what we're talking about, I really don't know how you haven't heard of it. Maybe you only come out to civilization to download our podcast once a week.
What a world that
Just
would be.
and I mean, it's been like a month at this point
Yeah.
since all of this. So this is like old news. You're probably reminding you that it ever happened. Um, yeah, basically it was like a submarine that was not built well whatsoever. People paid a lot of money to go on it for the purpose of going to see the Titanic. And since one, it had made multiple trips, which I heard that was part of the reason too, because it like
Mhm.
puts pressure and wear on the metal that was already not great metal.
Yeah.
It was being controlled by like an off-brand PlayStation controller. The
Mhm.
stuff was bought at Camping World. It was not a great submarine.
Yeah.
Like people have gone down to James Cameron has gone down to the Titanic 33 times with relatively no issues, and that is because he
Mhm.
spends a lot of time and a lot of money making sure every single piece
Yeah.
is like I saw something that he spends hours debating on like a nail, like one nail
Mhm.
in the whole thing. Like
Yeah.
but people paid money, this went down. Everyone thought it was lost for a really long time. People didn't know, did it implode? Did it get
Mhm.
stuck? What's happening to it? If it is stuck, there's nothing we can do. There's no way to tow this out.
Yeah.
Are these people just only have so much air left and are just sitting there waiting? But it did come out. It did basically implode not so
Mhm.
long after takeoff.
Yeah.
Um, and unfortunately, all those people did die. But it's been a TikTok sensation. Um, craziness.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been big news.
Definitely a big pop culture moment. But yeah, so like Courtney said, if you've already forgotten, because these things tend to be very fleeting uh in our brain space. But that whole situation did bring up these conversations of the Zong Massacre, which was in 1781. So what exactly was the Zong Massacre? So the Zong was a ship that was designed to carry enslaved people from Africa to the United States. The Zong departed from Accra on September 6, 1781, with 442 enslaved people. Accra is on the coast of Africa in Ghana, and during this time, a lot of money could be made in the human trafficking business, and many captains would take on more enslaved people to maximize their profits. The Zong's captain, Luke Collingwood, overloaded the ship and left Africa. The ship was likely carrying double what was safe for it to actually carry. By November 29th, many of the people on the boat had begun to die from disease and malnutrition, and the Zong then sailed into an area in the mid-Atlantic known as doldrums. So the doldrums are known for being areas with little to no wind, and so basically the ship is like sitting stranded at this point. So during that time, sickness caused 7 of the 17 crew members to die and over 50 of the enslaved people to die. It is also later claimed at this point that they were running out of fresh water due to the navigational misdirections. So, becoming desperate, Collingwood decided to jettison some of the cargo to save the ship. So, if you're not familiar with that term, jettison means to throw or drop from an aircraft or ship. And this would also provide the ship owner an opportunity to claim the loss on their insurance. But now remember, this is a human trafficking ship. So, this cargo are actually human beings. So on November 29th, Collingwood ordered for 54 enslaved Africans to be thrown overboard. Another 78 were drowned over the next 2 days. And in total, the crew threw 132 sick or dying enslaved people over the ship. An additional 10 threw themselves overboard in what Collingwood called an act of defiance. And there are other reports claiming that it's uncertain who gave the orders since Collingwood was sick. 208 enslaved Africans remained on the ship when it finally made it to Jamaica. Once the Zong arrived in Jamaica, James Gregson, the ship's owner, filed an insurance claim for their losses. So Gregson argued that the ship did not have enough water for the crew and the enslaved people. The insurance underwriter, Thomas Gilbert, disputed the claim, citing that the Zong had 420 gallons when she was inventoried in Jamaica. However, the Jamaican court in 1782 found in favor of the owners. They said that if it's acceptable to kill animals for the safety of the ship, that it was also permissible to kill enslaved people for the same reason.
Yeah.
Just let that absorb
sink
a moment.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that just rough.
So the insurers appealed the case in 1783, and during this appeal, it got a lot of public interest and the attention of Great Britain's abolitionists. The leading abolitionist at the time, Granville Sharp, used the deaths of enslaved people to increase public awareness about the slave trade and the anti-slavery cause. Sharp was the first to use the words massacre. So before the Zong trial, it was kind of like undetermined how to classify Africans being deliberately killed as far as insurance claims go. Enslaved people were classified as cargo, but English law accepted natural deaths of simply dying or death by suicide to not be covered by insurance. So if the enslaved people died in a shipwreck or were killed in a revolt, however, then insurance would cover it. What's even more disgusting, if a ship had to be abandoned by the crew would just leave the Africans with the ship.
Yeah, so it was just like, they would just leave them and be like, all right, bye now. Have fun in the middle of the ocean.
Just literally
when we're a ship crew and can't even get this thing going, and you have probably never worked on a ship.
When we forced you here to take you somewhere to sell you, and now we're just going to abandon you in the middle of the ocean.
Yep.
So publicity surrounding the Zong and the first trial led to a second trial ordered by William Murray, the Earl of Mansfield, and the Lord Chief Justice of the King's Bench, which is the highest court in Great Britain. So Mansfield presided and ruled in favor of the insurers. He also held that the enslaved people had been poorly managed, as the captain should have made a suitable allowance of water for each enslaved person. Because yes, remember, they are actually human beings that actually do need water to survive, just like you do.
Yeah. I know. Groundbreaking.
Yeah, groundbreaking news here. So Sharp tried to get criminal charges brought against the captain, crew, and owners of the ship, but was unsuccessful. Great Britain's Solicitor General Justice John Lee refused to take the criminal charges because he said, quote, "What is this claim that human people have been thrown overboard? This is a case of chattels or goods. Blacks are goods and property. It is madness to accuse these well-serving, honorable men of murder. The case is the same as if wood had been thrown overboard." Again, just going to give that a minute to... This is a direct quote of a person of high ranking in Great Britain talking about these other human beings on the ship.
Saying it's the exact same as they had thrown a piece of wood overboard.
How dare you accuse these honorable men of murder? Ugh. So Sharp then tried to turn to the Quakers, who soon after launched their own agitations against the slave trade. So Quaker petitions, writings, and agitation formed the effective start of the campaign against the slave trade. So while this is kind of all going on around this time, the Zong is really what propelled a lot of key players, including Granville Sharp, Ulada Equiano, and the Quakers together. If this case hadn't been taken to court, likely no one would have heard about it.
Yeah, it's like one of those things, like, this likely happened multiple times, but like only because there was a trial did people even hear about it.
Exactly.
And it's only because like the insurance didn't want to pay out. Like, don't think this is anything like admirable. It's all over money.
Yes, exactly. And like you said, like, how many times has this happened before that we have no record of?
Yeah. And unfortunately, the Zong Massacre is only a small, tiny glimpse into the transatlantic slave trade. So a little bit of history or some facts on the transatlantic slave trade. So for 366 years, European enslavers loaded approximately 12.5 million Africans into ships, and about 11 million survived the journey to make it to the Americas. So European enslavers would take African men, women, and children from dozens of spots along the African coast, from Senegambia to Angola, and from the Cape to Mozambique. So basically just anything on that like west coast that's like could go over, and some towards like the south. And the majority of captives were taken from West and Central Africa and Angola. And the trade was actually initiated by the Portuguese and Spanish. So even before Britain kind of got involved, nearly 500,000 enslaved Africans have been transported to Brazil, which I didn't really know. I didn't really know who started it. So that was interesting to me, who was kind of the first. And this trade was widespread, involved many countries, as we will talk about, and it also victimized millions of African men, women, and children, not only the enslaved people taken in the transatlantic slave trade, their children and generations of children since.
Mm-hmm.
So the killing of Africans at sea was common throughout the international slave trade, and there are records of it occurring even into the 1860s within the international market. So while the Zong is an English ship, this was also true across the various countries who participated. So the Dutch spoke of enslaved people as, quote, stock. The French called them movable stock, and the Portuguese insurance law classified enslaved people alongside the animals in the field. So any history book who now tries to start whitewashing and be like, African people migrated to the Americas for work are fucking lying.
Yeah, they did
They're
not
fucking
choose.
lying.
Yeah, they didn't choose to come here. That's not how any of this went down.
No. So Britain ended the international slave trade in 1807, with the U.S. following behind in 1808. Now, this does not mean slavery was abolished. I'm sure if you know a little bit of American history, that seems a little early. But that's just the international slave trade. So the U.S. at this point had so many enslaved people in the country, they felt at this point with family, new babies being born into to enslave people, that they had enough to further sustain the internal trade. So they were like, we don't need more people because we've gotten enough and internally can keep it going. We don't need it internationally. So don't think Britain nor America are doing anything great here. And by the time of the American Civil War in 1860, there were around 4 million enslaved people in America. So they obviously had quite a few internally to keep that going. So after 1808, the British and U.S. navies tried to patrol to intercept illegal ships designed to carry enslaved people, but their efforts didn't really stop it at all. And while Britain had made this change to try and be abolitionists now, the years prior, they'd been one of the biggest navies participating in the slave trade. So don't also think Great Britain's doing anything great here. They just decided, if we're not doing it, we don't want you to do it, and kind of thing. And it was during actually the 19th century that there were many more examples of mass killings similar to the Zong. And we know more about these incidents because they were reported by officers serving on the abolitionist patrol, with accounts of Africans thrown overboard from Brazilian and Portuguese ships. They would report throwing sick enslaved people off of the ship alongside the rest of the people on board who had died. And actually, a lot of ship captains who would also choose to throw enslaved people off their ships rather than to be caught by abolitionist patrol and have their, quote, cargo impounded. So they would choose, if they were oh my gosh, the abolitionist patrol is coming, they would throw everyone overboard just so they wouldn't be caught.
I have no words.
Yeah. And we're just talking about the transatlantic slave trade. We're not even getting into any other aspect of this.
Yeah.
We're looking at the smallest glimpse of
a very
this.
Small portion of this whole fucked up system. Yeah.
And even though Britain and the U.S. ended the international trade in 1807 and 1808, more than 3 million Africans were shipped between 1808 and 1862, mainly to Brazil and Cuba. So France, Spain, Portugal, Brazil, and North America participated, usually flying under false flags. And Brazil wanted enslaved people for their new coffee plantations, and Cuba wanted enslaved people for their sugar and tobacco industries. So it's also not just America and the South. It's a lot of other countries as well that they're being kidnapped, forced into these boats, and then sold once they get to the Americas.
Yeah.
While mass murder at sea continued on into the 1800s, the Zong is one of the most infamous and credited as starting a catalyst for change, although change was not immediate. So it was like a very big deal, and just kind of really got a lot of people more up in arms to try and stop this in general, like hearing about this. And there's actually a Zong Massacre memorial in Black River, St. Elizabeth in Jamaica, and it was placed in December 2019. So they actually held a memorial service for the 132 enslaved Africans who were thrown to sea, and they then tossed flowers into the sea to honor those who died by drowning. In Grenada, there's an underwater sculpture park to honor the over 2 million Africans thrown into the sea during the transatlantic slave trade. And it is the first of its kind. It's hauntingly beautiful. I don't know if you've all have seen pictures of it. You should look it up. We'll post some. It is, yeah. But it sits 14 feet below at the bottom of the Molinaire Bay and is only accessible by scuba diving, snorkeling, or glass bottom boats. So it was designed by artist Jason DeCaires Taylor in 2006, and it's now listed as one of National Geographic's 25 Wonders of the World. So the most celebrated piece is Vicissitudes, which features a ring of children holding hands facing the ocean currents. And there's like quite a few different sculptures. Like it's a whole place. Like there's quite a few different parts, but that one's like the most celebrated piece. And the sculptures were made eco-consciously, like from concrete and rebar. So it creates an ideal surface for marine life to grow. And so actually a lot of like underwater creatures have come, like there even like some reefs are forming on some of the sculptures. So they didn't just like put that down there and say like, fuck the environment. Like it is helping the environment to kind of just create an even more beautiful piece.
That's interesting and also really good to know.
Yeah, I really want to go see it now. When I was looking it up,
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, that's like the big tourist thing to do in Grenada is to go see it and snorkel to it, scuba dive to it. But I mean, the pictures are beautiful. So
yeah, that's super cool.
And even though it's not about like the Zong massacre specifically, it is included with the whole transatlantic slave trade. So, unfortunately, due to the time, we don't have many like firsthand accounts of enslaved people who had to endure the transatlantic slave trade and what their conditions were like. Due to the way they were treated and likely due to language and writing barriers, we only kind of know snippets of their reality, but it was obviously very gruesome and horrible. Like, I feel like most of the accounts we have are from like crew members who are going to like not act like it was that terrible.
Yeah. Kind of downplay the conditions, and
we know it was horrible, but just like we don't have any like firsthand accounts of people that I know of. I mean, maybe there are some more out there and you could turn us to those sources, but like and even if they did survive the Middle Passage to the Americas, they were then sent to markets where they were auctioned off. So after you spend months in these horrible conditions on this boat, you were then sold and auctioned off and then treated horribly on a farm plantation somewhere, which is just also horrific.
Yeah.
And this episode is just a small glimpse into the transatlantic slave trade and slavery in general. I'm sure we could have made this like a multi-parter. Like, I just really wanted to focus more so on the Zong massacre and just kind of give highlights of the transatlantic slave trade. And like the sad part is like we cannot even find the names of anyone who was on the Zong ship that was not captain or crew. Like we don't know the people who were thrown overboard, the people who got there. I mean, maybe there are records somewhere, but it was 1781. So
yeah,
who even knows? And this is just one story of thousands.
I mean, did they even
12 million people in the transatlantic slave trade?
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm just wondering, like, would they have even recorded their names anywhere, or would they have just lost their names immediately and just become a number, you know? So it's like just absolutely horrific. Yeah. And like you said, the fact that this isn't well known, and how many more are there?
I did not know about it until I saw a TikTok being like, we're talking all about this submarine when no one's talking about the Zong massacre. And I was like, what's the Zong massacre? Like, I didn't know about it. And that was, you know, maybe partially due to my ignorance of just not knowing. But it's like, there are so many of these stories that just get whitewashed and buried and just not talked about. And it's just really important to remember it, because people today, especially white people, just like to say, like, that was a long time ago, like, just let it go, all this stuff. But it's like 12.5 million Africans in the transatlantic slave trade, who 11 million of them came to the Americas, who then their sons and daughters and their sons and daughters were born as enslaved people with no freedom for years, for decades. And even after slavery, quote, ended, then you had like the prison issue where you were just finding other ways to do forced labor. Like it just goes on and on and on. And then you had segregation and all this stuff. Like, it is such a big deal. And like, people just try to whitewash it in history books, or just be like, let's not talk about it. Let's not think about it. Just don't worry about it. It was a long time ago. And it's like, but not really. It wasn't that long ago.
The effects of something that horrific, of that magnitude, do not go away in a generation or two. Like, it just doesn't. You know, it's like there's still going to be negative effects from that today. Like, you still have, you know, just a few generations ago, like, Black people in this country who were not allowed to learn to read and write. So yes, you're going to see the trickle down effect of that, of Black students today who may have lower reading and writing skills because just a few generations ago, their family literally could not do so. And you don't have, like, there's just so many long lasting effects that people try to like dismiss, like, the struggles of Black Americans today as if it has nothing to do, with no regard for the fact that many generations in this country were enslaved, or if not enslaved, just completely legally discriminated against by every institution that they were a part of.
Yeah. So there's so many of these stories that just don't get told. And so like this one, when I heard about it, found it, I was like, we got to talk about it. Because it is mass murder of human beings.
Yeah. If you guys have similar cases that you would like us to cover, you know, be sure and let us know. That's the hard part with so many of these. It's just such limited information because it has been so long, because it was not considered something important, or was not considered such a tragedy at that time. So the records aren't like they would be today. But let us know if you guys have more cases similar to this that you want us to cover.
Yeah.
And awkward transition to hype up the end of this Friday night so Courtney and I can wrap up this second recording before all of our equipment dies. Courtney, what is your prick of the week?
So my prick of the week is going to be a little bit different because, as we've said, there's been 4 recordings in 5 days. My prick of the week is my co-host Jacqueline, because I know that I've thrown a wrench in a lot of our recording plans this week. We were supposed to double record Sunday, and I didn't get home till 9:30, so we had to record Monday and Wednesday, and then we were supposed to record Saturday, but I'm leaving early Sunday, and so I changed it to Friday. And if you've listened to this podcast, you know Jacqueline's not a go with the flow kind of girly. She's a plan it out girly, but she has gone with the flow so well this week and dealt with my chaotic ass that she deserves a segment.
Wow.
About thank you for working with me. And I'm just so sorry that I've texted you 70 times this week, changing our recording plans.
You know, it's all good. Like I said, we'll always figure out a way to make it work, you know, and maybe it's 2 a.m. next time. Maybe we take a few hours rest, get up, record, go back to sleep. You know?
I mean, at least our households would be quiet then. Everyone would be asleep.
That's a good point. Maybe we're onto something here. No one's going to be chopping watermelon. No one's going to be... I know your cats will still be awake. That's not going to...
Nova would be like, you're awake. It is time to party. But no, that is my perk of the week, because this week has been crazy. And in the podcast and in life, I appreciate you.
Oh, I mean, I do appreciate that, but I also love how you're like, well, it's the 4th episode in a week. I got to pull something out of my ass. So it's
no. I had planned this, but I didn't want to do it for the first one, because then I felt like it was too heartfelt. I had to end on that.
I gotcha.
I had to do I had to end on that one, but I had planned it. That wasn't, I had to come up with the other one, but I planned this one because I was texting you last night, like, God damn, I am the worst. I'm over here making us change our recording schedule 70 times because something keeps coming up.
It's fine. It's like I said, all I was gonna do tonight was clean my house, but then it stormed all day, so there's no point in mopping my floors because my dogs are just gonna be tracking mud in right after anyway. So it's fine.
Yeah. I know. I have to mop my floors tomorrow, which will be fun. But
fun.
Anyway, Jacqueline, what is your perk of the week?
Well, thank you for that heartfelt shout out. My perk of the week this week. It's very funny after yours. My perk of the week is my home warranty because my AC shit the bed this week. It hasn't gotten like too hot yet, but it was like pushing 90 a few days this week. So we're getting to that point of summer. But yeah, I came home from dance. Yeah, we went to dance. I came home from dance and I was like, Andrew, it's 78 degrees in here. And he's like, oh, it is? And I'm like,
how do you not feel that?
No, well, he freezes all the time because he has like the air vent is like directly in front of his desk, which is where he sits at the majority of his life. And so it's just like constant. So he's like always cold, but I'm like, yeah, maybe move to a different part of the house that's not directly in front of the only air vent in that entire big room too. So I'm like, sorry, you just gotta suck it up. Anyway. So I got home, it was like 78 degrees in my house. I'm like, well, this shit sucks. But when we bought our house, our realtor was able to negotiate a home warranty for us. And so I just have like a little portal on my website and I'm like, my air doesn't work. Courtney, we were actually recording that night. Courtney had to wait for me to go down and get the serial number off of my AC unit outside and then come back and start recording. But I submitted all that information at like 9:30 that night. 8:30 the next morning, I get a call from the company that they dispatched it to. And they're like, oh, we can be there today at like 1. And I was like, okay, great. And then, and it was fixed and it was covered under my home warranty. I only had to pay $100. They fixed like they had to replace the whole motor and shit that probably would have cost like $500 to $800 without it. And I only had to pay $100 and they came right out in less than 24 hours in June when everyone's AC is breaking. So yeah, it was wonderful. And I was very impressed with that company. I left them a nice Google review.
I love when like the warranty / insurance you get on something pays off.
Yes.
So like my engagement ring, because whenever Kevin bought it, they were like, do you want like the lifetime warranty? And it's like not just the lifetime of like your future wife, it's the lifetime of the ring. Like, this warranty goes way past me. But he was like, yes, she'll get mad at me if I don't get the insurance on it. But it has paid for itself over and over because it was like $300 and I've had it sized twice. I also, the like center diamond at one point, they were like, it's spinning and it's not supposed to spin. So that got fixed, fully covered. Like, I just love when a warranty like pays off.
Yeah, it definitely is like, you're like, oh, good, I actually like got my money's worth. But then, of course, it always sucks like when it doesn't. And you're like, well, I just wasted that money. But, it's definitely
That's why I never know if I should get pet insurance or not. I'm like, is the amount I pay each month, if I just put it in savings, would then...
That's why, we didn't have pet insurance for our first dog who had a lot of medical issues that by the time we even knew pet insurance was a thing, it was too late. So, we just had to suck it up. So then we got it for our next dog. But then after a year, I was like, well, I just put so much money into this that I got nothing back because it doesn't cover like wellness visits or anything like that. And then I started kind of doing the math too, that I'm like, okay, if I put this exact amount into a savings account, I could have enough money to pay these big bills if they come up, so that's what we ended up doing. Because it's a hard, especially with pet insurance, like other things are more...
Because it doesn't cover everything is the problem.
Exactly.
So, because like my cat...
it's pretty expensive, like for not covering
like 20 to 25 a month or something, because my work used to offer it and I was going to get it. And I was like, oh, it's expensive. But I mean, like my cat just had a $365 hairball. But then I'm like, okay, but I haven't really... she does this like once a year. So it's just like, is it worth it?
If you're paying that $25 a month for the last however many years. Yeah.
But anyway, with all that, let us know what you think of this case. Have you heard of it? Have you not heard of it? Do you have other stories similar that you think we should deep dive into? Because we would love to. And I know this was just kind of a very surface level talking about the transatlantic slave trade. It goes so much deeper than all of this, but just kind of our general overview. Let us know if there's anything else you want us to cover. Let us know your perks of the week. You know where to find us. It's all in the show notes. But the most important platform that you can find us on is patreon.com/caffeinatedcrimes, where you can get so many bonuses. And at this point that this episode's coming out, there's another bonus coming out soon, but we don't know what it's about yet.
Nope.
But it'll be coming out, whatever it is.
That's future Jacqueline and Courtney's problem. That's post Courtney vacation problem.
Yeah, that's anything past this point is post vacation. Yes. But yeah, we have pins and stickers and Discord and Hangout. Sometimes a video. We'll do more if you want that. Just different stuff like that. And again, that's patreon.com/caffeinatedcrimes.
And as always, a lovely little 5-star review, especially on Apple Podcasts, because that's where the majority of our listeners are. That helps us get bumped up to, charts and people can see us and things like that. 5 stars, a little blurb about how much you like us is wonderful. On any platform is great because you can do that on other platforms as well. And we will also, don't forget, we will be at CrimeCon in Orlando in September. So come say hi to us if you guys are also there.
Yeah, we'd love to meet you. We'd love to talk to you. Yes. But yeah, in the meantime, go have a cup of coffee.
And don't commit a crime.